Hi, everyone. Alena here with Celebrate Every Step. And I am here today with Rita. And we are going to be talking about synchronicity is one of my very favorite topics, signs, symbols, and synchronicities. And ever since my brother died in 2007, it has been something that I have really paid attention to. I had other deaths before that really were very difficult, tragic, and had some synchronicities that had happened at that time. But when my brother died, that was what really blew that door wide open for me. And then when our son died in 2021, it was like, okay, I have no more questions. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And when I met Rita, it has just been one synchronicity after another. So,
Yes.
thank you for joining me today so that
Oh,
we
I'm
can
happy to
start
be
talking
here.
about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Rita is an author. She also does Reiki and readings and just a very dynamic person. So I'm really excited to talk with her today. And there'll be lots more info on her in the show notes. And obviously, we'll have a nice conversation today. So thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with where we met, and then we'll kind
Mhm.
of backtrack and go kind of bounce around and
That sounds
hopefully make
great.
sense of things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Rita came to a group past life regression that I did at Soul Space, which is in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. And yeah, so tell me about what led you to coming to that group session.
Well, let me tell you what led me to soul space in the
Oh,
first place,
yeah, let's start there.
because that is a synchronicity.
Mm,
I This is something I've been wanting to do, to explore this side of myself for a long time. I've always known it was there, but you're busy raising kids in your life. You're busy working. So now that I'm not working as much and my kids are all raised, I had the time to do it. So my granddaughter went to a birthday party, met a friend at the birthday party, wasn't the birthday girl, set up a couple play dates later. Her mother, Brittany, went to Soul Space often. So my daughter, Courtney, was talking about going. And I said, oh, I want to come too. So we set up a mini Reiki, mini reading. We set up a session. And then I started to go more often. I got my Reiki master there.
mm,
And then you were coming. So I just
yeah.
thought it would be interesting. I was curious as to what it was all about.
Yeah. Whenever you start opening up that more spiritual side, that more
Yeah.
metaphysical side, it does just kind of unfold. There's so many different routes to go. You can do more of the Reiki and the energy healing, or you might get into the oracle cards or the tarot. And then there's this whole other side with the hypnosis, the past life regression. I mean, I even do intergalactic, interdimensional things now. And so
Uh-huh.
it just, there's so many paths to go that I do really encourage people to just follow where they feel called to
Right.
follow, because it really does unfold exactly as it needs to. Oh, and crystals, of course. Everybody gets in on the crystal level.
Yeah.
Everybody likes the shiny stuff. And just need to close my window there. Um, so when you saw past life, had you ever read about it or heard about it, or what
Sure.
was your experience? Because some people are like, I don't know anything about that and I don't want any part of that. So where did you
Well,
land with that?
I I my grandmother had done several sessions of
Mm,
past life regression, and we talked about it. And I just wanted to check it out. And you know what? You're right. A lot of people think this side of all of us is scary, or they don't want any parts of it, and I don't understand that. I mean, somebody has a gift if they can play the violin from the very beginning, and it's
hmm.
very accepting. So why is this not a gift from
Yes.
divine? If, I don't know, your child's ability to play baseball is from
Hmm.
divine, it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and I
But
think that's one thing to look at. I've heard that analogy, because I know there's also some ideas that, we shouldn't be charging money for spiritual gifts, but the reality is that, my belief is that it is divine gifts that I can then develop or not. I do think we all have the ability to be more connected to the other side, but Michael Jordan had a gift for basketball, and then he worked very hard at it and got paid a lot of money to play basketball.
Right.
So, if this is what I am dedicating my life's work to, then, you do deserve to be compensated for doing spiritual work. And so, yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at this world. And, obviously religion complicates that sometimes. But I've always been of the mind that, I've always been very skeptical, but curious. And so
Hmm.
that has allowed me to come in and ask lots of questions. But then once I experience it for myself, okay, well, then I'm a believer now. And
Hmm.
just always curious as to how that's going to continue to unfold. So I love that your grandma introduced you, because it was my grandma that introduced
Oh,
me to
nice.
the past life world as well. So did she go in person to do her regressions, or where did she have that?
She did. That was a long, long time ago. It was just a natural part of our conversations. It
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily any specific events that I remember.
Yeah.
It was just there. It
Yeah.
was just like the peanut butters on the counter,
Mhm.
It was just always there.
Yeah. And
So,
I kind of actually love that, because that's how it was for me too. I'm writing my book and talking about kind of just all the progression of my life. And it wasn't even a big deal. Like, she would talk about her near death experiences, because she had a lot of surgery. So she had died twice on the table, went to the other side and came back. And then she also had that past life experience. And it was just like a normal conversation. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell you about this. It was
right,
just like, hey, this happened. All right.
exactly.
And yeah, so I
Mhm.
kind of love that, because it takes the scariness or the like the woo woo out of it. It was just like a normal conversation, and like,
Yeah.
yep, this happened and that's all it is.
It was no different than if she went to the grocery store and we talked about what she bought or what she was making for
Yeah.
dinner. It was just a natural. It was
Yeah.
natural. That's
Yeah.
the best way to describe it.
Yeah. That's
So,
so neat.
so I wanted to do this for myself. So I came to your group session,
Mhm.
and there's about 8 of us, I think.
Mhm.
And I noticed a few things as you were doing it before, like I slipped into the, what is that called? The right before that hypnotic state.
Oh yeah, just I call it the in between times,
Deep,
but yeah.
deep,
Oh, the
deep, Tatum.
theta
Okay.
waves. Mhm.
Okay. So, the way you do it is so relaxing because you put a certain cadence to your voice.
Mhm.
So, I figured out that that's on purpose. So you're not paying attention to everything else because you're trying to figure out for me, what
Mhm.
exactly that cadence was all about.
Mhm.
So I did slip into the hypnosis, and it was fabulous. So I'll just go
Yeah, go
ahead
ahead.
and explain what I saw.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's a door. Open the door, walk out. What's under your feet? Do you have shoes on? What color are your shoes?
Mhm.
I had no shoes on. I was in wet grass. What is ahead of you? Are there buildings? There wasn't a building. There was just land with hills.
Mhm.
Um, I was this is, talk about, you picked me good for this one because this is so synchronicity. So it turned out this girl was 12 or 13 years old, and she was a healer for the community.
Mhm.
She liked it very much. She enjoyed that kind of thing, but she also kind of wished she could just play with the kids because
Mhm.
she was often called away to do those kinds of things. So, it was interesting, and I'll be writing a book about this too. We're both writers.
Yes.
Um, I saw as she sat to recharge her healing, she had symbolic flames on her hands
Mm.
as she sat receiving from the earth and the sky at the same time. So I left that feeling like that was kind of cool. And I thought a little bit about it. And over these past 2 years, I've started doing a lot of meditating. During that meditations, I get a lot of messages from beyond that I've now trust myself to
Mm-hmm.
give to people. But I woke up or came out of my thing and I had a book called at that time it was called When Dandelions Die. I knew I had to change the title.
Mm-hmm.
Um but that's where my thought process was.
Yeah.
So,
Let's talk real quick. So with that life, there was a big parallel with your current life
oh
too.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
that was huge piece of that where, I talk a lot about because people will say, well, why would I want to do a past life? Like it's done, it's over with. Why would I want to go back? But the problem is that we're one soul. And so we're going through all of these experiences and then we plan this lifetime and we come into this lifetime and for most of us, we forget consciously what's happened in the past, but the cell memory is still there. And so for you, if you want to share a little
Well,
bit about how that was connected to your current life, because you kind of touched on that where she just wanted to be a kid, but would get pulled away from that
yes,
because of her gifts. So yeah, I'd love to hear
yes.
that.
So, it happened to me twice when I was younger. Once when my grandfather died, and nobody asked me to do this. I would have been around 11, and I went and I stayed at my grandmother's house every night for a year
Mm,
because I didn't want her to be alone. There was many times I just wanted to stay home and be a kid,
mm-hmm.
and nobody told me to go there, but I knew that was what I was supposed to
What you
do.
needed to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I went there. And then when I was 13, my aunt came out of an abusive relationship. She was living with her three children, my cousins at the time. And at that age, I was, I spent every night there and a lot of time there because she took seizures.
Mm,
I had to be there to help her through them or make a decision. Do I need to call my mom to come over? Do I need to call the ambulance to come
yeah.
over?
At 13.
And I did that for several years. Nobody said, you must do this.
Yeah.
I just knew I had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I missed school dances. I
Mm,
missed those kinds of things because I had that responsibility.
yeah.
But nobody ever expected it of me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember that feeling where you're torn. And then for me to see this girl, and she's the exact same age, I know I can write that book because I've lived it
Yeah.
3 times, you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I just love that back and forth connection. And how did that feel to you? Did it feel more peaceful once you kind of got that awareness that that's been your path many times? Did you have any resentment or animosity about having done that in your younger years? Or like what was your like when you left that, how did it impact your current life? And we'll get into the synchronicity, of course, too, but was there
sure.
any certain feelings that it brought to you?
It was honestly, it was just peace. And you know what? It took a while. It
Mhm.
took a lot of time of my meditation and thinking about it to connect them
Yeah.
because I wasn't connecting at
Mhm.
all. And um again, through meditation, I was like, oh my gosh, you know?
Yeah.
Uh and it was like this is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So, Rita did a group session. And so that is where she's experiencing everything internally. And we do talk about it, but obviously there's, like you said, there was about 8 people. So
Hmm.
everybody got a couple minutes to talk about their experience. If you had been one on one with me, we would have been talking through that the whole time and processing that in a different way. So it
Hmm.
may not have taken quite as long for you to get that
Right.
aha or that connection. But obviously, I trust, and I know you trust that things unfold exactly as they're meant to. So you
Hmm.
were meant to come in that group and do that work on your own so that you could come to your own awarenesses.
I
But
think
I
so
do want
too.
to point out that difference in a group session versus the
Right.
individual session too. So yeah, and yeah, so you continue to meditate on that
Hmm.
to really integrate that experience, which is an important
Exactly.
piece of this. It's not just a like, oh, that was cool, but it is more so a, okay, what do I actually need to know or do with this information? Sometimes it's just letting it be. And then other times for you, like with you, there was action to take. So,
Yes.
yeah, if you want to get into how the book all unfolded.
So, this book, and I'll just tell you briefly the idea behind it. I was looking in my yard one spring and there were pods of dandelions. Some had two, some had five buds, some had whatever. And within that, one would be a bud, one maybe was starting to fall over, one would turn gray a little bit. And it hadn't been that awful long prior to me writing that I did lose my grandmother.
Mm,
And I was never sad about her going because we talked a lot about that, but thought they're like families. So I wrote a book with a little dandelion and his grandmother kind of leading him through his life and how to cup water. And when the bee comes, don't be afraid. And
mhm,
then the grandmother slowly gets weaker
mhm,
and her bloom turns gray and little dandelion is very, very upset. He didn't want rainwater. He didn't want any of that anymore. He just
mhm,
wanted his grandmother back. But then he saw the wind, and the wind picked up the dandelion, reseeded,
mm.
and new blooms came up.
Yeah.
And at that point, he understood that his grandmother didn't die. She went on to her next phase.
Mhm.
And so I sent that book. I say that because I sent that book to my agent who said dandelions don't have feelings.
Mm.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I sent it to my editor in New York City. They couldn't understand. They loved the story, but couldn't understand how to do the illustrations from page to page. They thought it would be static with
Mm.
just the dandelions on each
Mhm.
page. So I started sending it out over 10 years,
Mm.
reject, 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 in mainstream publishing. So after my session with you, I'm in a meditation and came out of it. And it was just, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been sending this to the wrong publishers all along. I need to send this to Native American publishers.
Mhm.
So I sent it out, and within a week, I sold the book.
Ugh,
With the,
chills. Insane.
it's crazy. Um, the Ojibwe tribe, who is located in Minnesota, Wisconsin, mostly gathered around southern Canada, up in that area around Lake Superior. In the Ojibwe tribe, they have a story that's very similar
Mm.
about the south wind that comes by every day past the beautiful dandelion, but never stops.
Mm.
She means to stop them, but she never does until one day she was gray and the wind had picked it up. And it was almost the exact same story.
Wow.
So that is now integrated with my book.
Mhm. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to read that because so, one of those synchronicities for me was that my my connection to dandelion. And so, my dad would always talk about that when I was little, I would pick up the dandelions and blow the dandelions, and he would always laugh because it just spread even more quote unquote weeds through our
Mhm.
yard. And then when I got my one tattoo, it is a fairy sitting on a lotus and she's blowing a dandelion. And then above that is the angel. And for me, that representation was of my loved ones where they're transitioning into spirit, but they're not really gone. And um, so obviously I was like, oh my gosh, like I have such a connection to dandelion. And then since Bodhi has died, dandelion has shown up when I went and presented at a retreat in January. That was my first, not my first time in a big group, but uh, coming into somebody else's event and presenting, which I put more pressure on myself. Because if it's just me advertising myself, okay, that's on me. But now I'm coming into somebody else's event and
Mhm.
presenting. And it was the middle of winter And as I was walking in, a dandelion puff blew right in front of me. And that's become one of my symbols for Bodhi, and just that reminder that he is still with me.
Beautiful.
And, so when you're calling me and telling me this, and I'm just like, holy smokes, holy smokes, holy smokes, like just full body chills, because it's just synchronicity after synchronicity. So
Mhm.
I just love everything about this connection.
Yeah, I do too.
And so I love that. So the little girl that you were in that past lifetime was a Native American little girl. And so, right? Or was she
No.
not? Oh,
Oh, and
okay.
yes, she was Native American. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. I missed that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So your past life, she was Native as well. And so, um, it is just opening up that connection, that we are all one, that we have all been different genders, different races, different religions. And if we can let go of that separation, we really can just open our hearts to just so many possibilities, and just really loving one another and taking good care of each other, instead of what's happened throughout history with othering and persecution, and all of those pieces too. So
So I'll just tell you the name of the book is now Little Dandelion.
perfect.
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever online.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, definitely check that out. I need to get that ASAP. And so, one of the other things was the I had gone to Sedona prior to
Oh
us
gosh, I forgot all
meeting.
about
I
it.
know,
Yeah,
this one's another crazy. And so I was coming in off of that Sedona high into that event
that's
at
right.
Soul Space, and then you and your husband were getting ready to leave for Sedona
That's right.
shortly after. And I had had an amazing day with Joseph White Wolf, who is a shaman that lives in Sedona. And you were asking me, what should I do? And I was like, oh, I know what you need to do. You need to meet Joseph. And so I don't know if I had yet sent you the information, but then if you want to talk about the meditation that you had and the connection with him.
So you gave me his number and I reached out because I was absolutely not leaving Sedona without meeting Joseph.
Yes.
So I had emailed, but I hadn't heard back yet. And I went into a meditation that evening, and I saw a building with an open roof over the top, held out some by some poles. So I don't want to call it a lean-to, but it was just like an offshoot porch with a roof kind of
Hmm.
thing. Very handmade. But there was a plant. I saw everything. There was a plant there, but it wasn't in a vase. It was kind of in a like a tire or something,
Hmm.
anything like that. It was very dusty. There was a string hanging down with feathers and bells attached to the bottom of it. And I'm seeing all this. And before all this started, in my brain, I was hit with like a ball of light
Mm.
went off first and kind of exploded. And then this happened. So the next day, so this would have been 1:30 in the morning because I wasn't sleeping
Okay.
well that night. Okay. Or no, that ball woke me up. That's what it was.
Okay.
I was in a sleep. And so I called Joseph, I'm sorry. The next day called me back and we set up our appointment. I'm like, by the way, does your house have like a porch on the side that uh it's like a carport? That's what it's called, carport
Oh,
on.
carport. Yeah. Hmm.
And he said, yes, I just put that on last year. And I was, oh, it has like a corrugated roof. He goes, yes, it does. I'm like, and I saw like on a chain a bell with a feather. And he goes, oh, my wind prayers. I'm like, you're
Hmm.
what? You're what? He goes, my wind prayers. And I told him, and I saw his place.
Yeah.
So I looked him up online and started scrolling through his pictures. And that exact scene was right there online, exact scene. So when I told him, he said that it's remote viewing that I was doing.
Yeah.
And at 10:30 that night, he was sitting by the fire, and that same bolt of light hit him at the
Mm,
same time, at 10:30 his time,
mm.
1:30 in the morning my time.
Wow. Wow.
Crazy.
And there's just no way to even, I'm sure somebody could pick it apart, but you hadn't yet connected with him. You hadn't looked up any pictures.
No.
Alls that I had given you was his email and phone number,
Mhm.
and just such an amazing connection. And those are the things that I look for. That really lets me know, okay, you're on the right path. Like, you definitely need to connect with this person.
Mhm.
And, it was validation for me too of, okay, you had an amazing experience with Joseph. And then you did the right thing by sharing his information with Rita so that she can go meet him and
Mhm.
have her experience with him. And those wind prayers are very special. When I did my day retreat with him, he had a wind prayer, and so we went out to his one of his sacred spaces out in the desert and hung one up for my son. And so they are, there was just it was detailed information, but there's also layers to how special that
Mhm.
was, that you had that connection with him prior to even having a conversation with
Weird.
him. Just so, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I love it. I love that kind of stuff. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
And, you can feel the vortexes there. I felt
Mhm.
like at home. When I do Reiki or anytime I'm meditating for the sole purpose of connecting with spirit, it starts from the ground up.
Mhm.
I can feel it in my feet, in my legs. And so I'm pulling the energy from Mother Earth most
Mhm.
of the time. And that there in not on the mesas so much, but on the lower ground where you do pull more from the earth is where I could really feel the
Oh,
energy.
yeah. Yeah. And absolutely I love Arizona in general, but then just love Sedona. And of course, now it's become very popular.
Hmm.
But even when I was there 15 years ago, I just remember feeling so at home there. And
Hmm.
it's so different from Pennsylvania, where we are, where it's very lush and green and rocky
Hmm.
and mossy and water. And I love all of that too. I love the rocks and the moss and the water, but there is something so special for me when I go to the desert, and it's just that the red rocks and the dust, and it is
Hmm.
that Mother Earth connection. And it's
Hmm.
two very different experiences with Mother Earth, but both very healing for me personally, but then just amplifies that spiritual connection too.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
very fascinating to me to think about how they couldn't be more different, really.
I know.
The two places that I love the most. And I know for me, I use kind of two scenes when I go into my meditation or my special place. There was a shaman's cave that I saw when I did one of the Jeep tours, and it was basically just a hole in the mountain. And so I imagine myself there, and that's where I do one of my connection meditations, and then the other one is the waterfall with the rocks and the moss. And so I
Hmm.
kind of bounce between those two depending on what I most need on a particular day. So I love that you feel that Mother Earth connection too.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah. So tell me about your Reiki, your cards, and what you offer with that. Or what's your main business?
My main business is health insurance and
Oh,
Medicare.
okay.
I've been doing that 30 some years. It's not that I love insurance, but I love
Mhm.
people.
Mm.
So I feel like I can be that one person that will guide them in the way of their best interest rather than my own, which so many people do lead with their
Yeah.
own interests. So I love doing that. It's the people connection.
Mhm.
Um, my Reiki, I mostly do it for family and friends at this point.
Okay.
Here and there, I have done it at events.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard for me at an event because I get so connected with somebody's energy. I don't want the distractions
Yeah.
around. And I found as the more I did the Reiki, the more I was able to connect
Mhm.
with people, connect them maybe to the other side a little bit. It's very subtle, but I was doing Reiki for my cousin. She actually is the daughter of the aunt that I would go visit
Oh, okay.
that died. She
Mhm.
died at a very, very young
Mm.
age. Um, so I was doing her Reiki, and when just in my head, I was saying, Aunt Luann, if you want to come and connect with Sherry, now's your time. Just go ahead, come through me. So I got over the throat chakra, which of course is blue. And all of a sudden, all these blue butterflies is what
Mm.
I saw just out. So I finished up the Reiki and I asked my cousin, do blue butterflies mean anything to you? She goes, no. I'm like, wow, because when I was there, that's what these came out. And she goes, well, except for this butterfly, this blue butterfly on my shoulder that I got in honor of my mom. It's like, are you kidding me? Really?
No, nothing with butterflies. Isn't that so
No.
funny when people do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. And those are those really neat things where, yeah, like they don't even put it together. So how could you possibly put that together? And then it's that aha moment where it's like, well, yeah, oh yeah, I do have that blue butterfly tattoo. Oh
She goes,
my
but it
goodness.
has more green in it. And I look,
Yeah.
I'm like, not anymore. You know what happens with
Yeah,
that?
it's faded. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
know. Yeah, and it's not like connection to spirit is an exact science.
right.
It's filtering through from them to you, and then you have to interpret that or
Yeah, I need to
present
use
it
my
and
own experience and
mhm.
symbols or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really beautiful. And, it is just an evolution too. At some point, you may feel more called to offer it to a greater audience, and
Mhm.
you just have to trust that process and how that will unfold for you. Because I definitely did not imagine, when I got my master's in social work 17 years ago, I didn't think, oh, gee, someday I'm sure I will have a business where I do the mental health piece and then I do the spiritual piece and then I do the metaphysical piece. I could have never imagined all of that, but my life has just unfolded in that way and felt
Mhm.
drawn to certain trainings and certain experiences, which then just keeps expanding my view of the world and my
Yeah.
view of how I can help other people too. So,
Yeah. So it evolved from Reiki. I think that's what opened me up. I
mhm,
also think about what a lot of times, like, what kicked all of this off in me?
mhm,
What started all of this? And I think back to I had a very traumatic surgery when I was about 7 years old.
mm,
And I was awake for the whole thing. They
mm.
just used some numbing medicine. Of course, the Harley comes by now.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of kick started it because I remember I was only 7, but I remember having to take myself out of that situation,
Mm,
sort of,
mhm.
to get through it. And sometimes I think that that's kind of when it kick started.
Yeah.
'Cause different people kickstart for different reasons.
Mhm.
I think that that was a large part of
That
it.
was your point where you felt that connection to
Maybe
the
it
other
kicked.
side.
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's very common, with the hypnosis. And one of the books that I read was um talking about emergency situations and how that is such an open and vulnerable state. And so it is very similar to when you go into a relaxed, meditative, or hypnotic
Mhm.
state, you are very suggestible, you are very open, and you were also young at the time. So
Mhm.
that probably did help expand your awareness and your consciousness. Because, yeah, I remember back to being about that age. And that was when I would meditate, but I didn't know it was meditating, where my head would feel really big and my body would feel really small. And then I couldn't, or then my body would get really big in my head, so it was just that where time and space was very fluid. And
Mhm.
I could, go to the top of the ceiling and be looking down, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just messing around
Right.
in that
That's it.
relaxed and open state. And so it is neat though to hear other people's experiences and where that turning point happens for them. So thank
Right.
you for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a really fun conversation. I love sharing about the signs, symbols, and synchronicities because I think a lot of people feel so very lost. They don't
Mhm.
trust themselves to make decisions. They're afraid of making the wrong decisions. They aren't sure about their life path or purpose. And I mean, I know I even question that at times, like, what am I supposed to do next? Where do I need to go? What do I need to do? And when we can slow down, when we can take some breaths, when we can meditate, when we can move, when we can listen to music, whatever it is that makes us feel more connected, um, we really can see, oh, I'm on the right path because when I said this, this happened. And Rita got to also meet Joseph and have her experience with him. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't felt
Exactly.
called to go to that race and have that experience and reach out to him. There was so many things that had to happen for me to end up there. And then so many things to happen for you to come to the group. And then so many things for you. It's just this like, oh, these little decisions along the way add up to our life path. And we don't, it's
Mhm.
not always the billboard blinking lights like, oh, this is your next path, this is your next choice.
Not
It's just
it's
those
not
simple day-to-day things.
You need to go with the wave, not jump into it,
Yep,
you
absolutely.
know?
I love that. Go with the wave. I'm going to write that down so I can put it in our Excellent. Do you have anything else that you feel called to share today?
Um, just this is such an amazing kind of place to be, and I can feel myself evolving very, very rapidly. I started with that. I did tarot. I've now switched over to Oracle because I'm finding, and I probably at some point won't even need that. That's what I'm
Mhm.
working towards. Um, these messages and peace that I can give people out of the blue. I'll tell you one other synchronicity. I have a friend of mine I haven't seen in 25 years. She, her daughter died when she was about 24 years old. And then uh, her husband died
Mm.
not long after that, a year or two after that. And of course, I thought about her. I followed her online. But one night her husband came, and all I saw was her in a pink bridal dress. And
Mm.
I saw like heels in sand, like if you were to pull somebody in sand, that path. I interpreted that as he's with her all the time,
Mhm.
don't worry about it. And I called her out of the blue and said, "Are you open to receiving a message? I haven't talked to you in 25 years, but the
Yeah.
weirdest thing happened." So we got to talking, and I was telling her the different images. And she said to me, "Do you know what?" And this is the first time I've done this. "Do you know what color his suit was?" And I said to her, "Wait a minute, I'll go look." And I closed my eyes and I saw him again. I just said, "Wait a minute, I'll go look."
Yeah.
And I said to her, "He's in a slate suit." Who says slate?
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what she wore." And her sister wore pink in her wedding.
Oh my gosh.
And she always feels like he's with her. And then her daughter came, and I felt like it's scary for me to give her the message from her daughter because
Mhm.
I know, and what pain
Yeah.
she has been through with that. But she came. This is all she said. "I don't know what it means. Um, look in the diary. That's where the answers are. And it's got a red ribbon." And she goes, "Well, I haven't written in a diary for a long time." I'm like,
Mm.
"It wasn't your diary."
Yeah.
So she went and looked through the diaries, and her daughter had tucked in there a Christmas picture of the three of them together, and a red ribbon went
Mm,
across the thing. So it was, we're still family.
yeah.
That was the message. And that kind of stuff, that's where I'm more going towards now,
Yeah.
is just, a connect. It's, it just blows my mind. And
Yeah.
now she and I are getting together again.
Oh, good.
I'm happy that I can be that
Mm-hmm.
connection. And we're going to a sound bath.
Oh,
It's
wonderful.
fabulous.
I love sound baths. Yeah.
Mhm,
And yeah, a big part of this is being really willing to feel silly or
mhm,
dismissed, or people, I have called people and been like, "Hey, I know I haven't talked to you in a really long time, but I had a dream last night that was very vivid. Are you okay?" Or just, whatever it is. And it's to me that's beautiful because it does show that we're still connected even after 25 years or
yeah,
10 years, that there is still that soul connection that can come through. And then if we can bring that added layer of a connection to a loved one, or just an insight into, um, you know, is everybody okay? Maybe have this person get checked out, or just, those little nudges that we receive from spirit, from God, whatever term we want to put
mhm,
towards it. I do think that it is all a gift and meant to help us on our path. So,
mhm. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing
I
that. That
know.
was really beautiful.
Yes.
So, um, please let us know what you think. Check out Rita's book, her latest, and she has other books as well. So
Mhm.
once you find her, then you can find all of her books. And um, yeah, just reach out to us, send us a message, let us know what you think. Share with me your synchronicities. If you have a story that you would like to share, I would love to have you on. And everybody out there, take care. And thanks for being here, Rita.
Bye, thanks.